Hello, welcome everybody to History's Calling. We are so excited to have joining with us two BYU alumni, Krishna Aniel. She is the Community Services Specialist and Internship Fellowship Coordinator, long title, and Rachel Moore, who's a current Conservation Lab intern and future UCLA grad student. And they both work at the National Museum of the American Indian with the Smithsonian. So ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Our pleasure. We love talking with BYU students because of a personal connection. But to start out, I'll introduce myself, and then Rachel will introduce herself and talk more about her museum experiences. And then we'll do a Q&A closer to the end. But to start out, I'm a former Smithsonian intern who creates opportunities for interns as the internship and fellowship coordinator at the Smithsonian's National Museum of the American Indian. The Smithsonian is the world's largest museum and research complex with 19 museums and counting, 9 research centers, the National Zoo, a recording label, and several units in the West area and other locations. I earned my MDs with a history emphasis at BYU in 2006. And to be honest, I really wasn't sure where afterwards, but it was my internship at this that really helped career. So growing up, I always had an interest in museums. My parents even took Links and I to the Smithsonian when I was grade. And when I was at BYU, I had volunteered at the Museum of Art. But I felt like I was kind of late in the game with internships because I didn't do one until after I graduated. And like nowadays, I'm seeing younger and younger candidates. Like we have high school interns who've completed 2 to 3 internships before they even graduated high school. And so I would encourage everyone to at least complete 1 or 2 internships as an undergrad because it's kind of expected in today's job market. And if you do an internship for academic credit, it's like hitting 2 birds with 1 stone with the academic and professional experience. And BYU has the Washington Seminar Program in DC, which makes it easier for students to complete an internship year-round. And so, like my journey is I started out as an unpaid intern at the Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, or APAC for short, in fall 2006. And that year, APAC was hosting the Filipino-American Centennial Commemoration, which marks the 100th anniversary of Filipino immigration to the United States. And I was able to assist with various public programs that featured Filipino-American filmmakers, authors, and chefs. My parents immigrated from the Philippines to the US in the 1970s, so interning at APAC was especially meaningful for me on a personal level. In a family history class at BYU, I did an oral history report about my parents' immigration stories and was able to use some of that research during my internship. My father immigrated through the US Navy and my mother immigrated as a registered nurse. And the curators at our sister unit in the Work and Industries Division at the National Museum of American History asked me if I could ask my parents to donate their work uniforms to fill in some of the gaps they had in their collections. So that was a really neat experience to be able to have some of my family's history be a part of a national collection. And so during my internship, I really tried to be resourceful, to be a problem solver, and basically just make myself useful. And one good question to ask, like, your internship supervisor, are there any back burner projects that I can help you complete? Because that will jog ideas, and that's a good piece of advice that I can attest. It works, it is helpful. And with an interdisciplinary liberal arts degree, I was able to sharpen my research and writing skills during my internship. And I made sure whatever written assignment I had, it could have been an event memo, an event pamphlet. I made sure that the product was signature ready, as I like to call it. It was basically ready for my directors to sign off on. And so, yeah, so as an intern, try to do quality work with little or no revisions. And so at the end of the fall semester, I asked my supervisor if I could continue in some capacity with APAC. And my unit, they ended up creating a full-time trust-funded position for me. And so I was a direct hire at the Smithsonian. I was very fortunate and blessed that I was able to stay at that unit for almost 3 years and have been able to move around the Smithsonian for the last 15 and a half years, working in education and outreach. So a key takeaway is that internships are a stepping stone and can really help you launch your career. And I know several Smithsonian staff who are also former interns and got their start out that way. But I know it's not always common for an intern to get hired right after an internship. A lot of it was being in the right time at the right place. But if there isn't an immediate job opening, you can stay connected by either extending your internship, becoming a volunteer, a fellow, or contractor. This is what some of our former interns have done. And they're still part of the network. And they're often like the first ones to know about a job opening. And so, yeah, networking starts with your peers as an intern and keeping in touch with your former colleagues. So next, from 2009 to 2018, I served as the education program specialist at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, or Wilson Center for short, where I managed 2 internship programs with 250 to 300 interns a year and a visiting scholar program with 75 fellows annually. So the Wilson Center is a mid-sized research center affiliated with the Smithsonian. And my former boss at APAC was a fellow at the Wilson Center. So that's how I was able to network with the Scholars and Academic Relations Department there. And in June 2009, I was able to transfer to the Wilson Center after completing my master's in liberal arts degree with American Studies concentration at Georgetown University. I had been going to graduate school part-time in the evenings while working full-time. So it took me a little while. It took me 3 years to complete my program, but that's how I was able to pay for grad school. Then in October 2018, I was hired to build up the internship program at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American Indian, managing the internship and fellowship programs at our 3 locations. In Washington, DC, we have a museum, and we have a large collections and research facility in Maryland, and also at our museum city. And in summer 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic made us pivot to virtual internships and fellowship programs. And so that has been a really interesting part of working in the experiential learning field, like seeing it evolve to virtual programs. So that's like my story in a nutshell. But I would like to introduce one of our current NMA interns, Rachel Moore, who will tell us more about her museum experience and journey.
Thank you, Krishna. So yeah, I have a super long story I can tell, but I'm gonna kind of make it more of a nutshell, like Krishna said. So I actually entered BYU with the intent, I applied, and I was saying, I'm gonna be a photojournalist. So I signed up for my anthropology courses, my photography courses. I wanted to do a double major in photography and anthropology. After about a semester of that, I was just like, you know what, this doesn't quite feel right. I ended up taking an anthropology course and fell in love. And then I ended up working for the Museum of Peoples and Cultures there on campus under Paul Stavis, who's still there. And I would say that was kind of the biggest turning point for what ended up becoming my future. I remember taking museum courses as just like, oh, let's take a step over there and work in a museum. I like it. And again, it's one of those things, taking those courses, I just fell in love with it. And so I went on, I loved my archaeology. So I was planning on going on to do a master's in archaeology. So it's another one of the stories. I was super willful. I was going to apply for archaeology programs and do a museum studies certificate with it. That was the plan. I was writing up my applications. I was getting ready to send it in to Arizona State, was kind of my top choice because their biological or their bioarchaeology program was like up there. It's one of the best ones in the country. And I was typing everything up, and the hour before I hit submit, I knocked it down from being an application for a PhD in the bioarchaeology program to a master's in museum studies. I chickened out. I was like, I think I'd better network and get my way in because it's such a great program. I want to get my foot in first and get to know the staff really well, the professors really well, and then that would help me bolster an application, like be for sure in for a PhD. Anyways, life happened during my master's. I ended up getting married and having a daughter, and I got bored, or not bored, I got tired. That's what it was. So I managed to finish in 2 years. I ended up finding work back at the Indian Public Cultural Center and tying in internships there again. Being in Albuquerque and from Albuquerque, that was where I wanted to be. And I found a museum that had a Native focus there, which was the Indian Public Cultural Center. My grandfather, I grew up kind of knowing Laguna Pueblo down there. I'm from the Hopi tribe. Sorry, I always forget to introduce that part of myself. But yeah, I'm from the Hopi tribe of Arizona. And so finding that place was really great. I ended up doing an unpaid internship there. And I really wanted to work in collections management. I loved materials. And I just stayed in touch there. And within months of my graduation, their curator went on to do something else. And so the job was open, and I just kept on knocking on their door saying like, hey, I already know the cultural center. I worked under the past curator. I have a degree. I can do this job. And I think that was my mantra when I got that job. And that's kind of what kept me in that job for about 4 years was I can do this job, but I really, really did not deeply enjoy it. I enjoyed parts of it. I loved connecting with people. I loved being surrounded by Native arts. But I missed touching objects. I missed being able to organize things and just really be surrounded by materials instead of always chasing the next exhibit. And so that's when things changed. I went to a conference and met some conservators there. And I sat in front of them and I turned around and I was like, this is going to be crazy, but are you guys conservators related with this project that's being presented? And they're like, oh yeah, we're in Santa Fe. And I was like, I would love to visit. And they gave me the opportunity to volunteer and get some experience. And that's ultimately what they're the ones that pointed me at the direction of NMAI and the conservation program that they have here. And so they spoke to my good work and sent me on my way to NMAI for their pre-program internship. So that's how I ended up here. I know I actually wanted to share some of the stuff. So being here as a pre-program intern, and it's just funny because, I was going down one career path and stopped and pivoted and changing it. So I'm going to objects conservation, which is kind of a subset of museums, is mostly where people work. If you're familiar with the field, it's awesome. It's a field that I looked at when I was at BYU very superficially. Dr. Finlayson, my professor of one of my classes, mentioned the field, and she's like, if you're interested in the field, you should probably take some chemistry courses. And chemistry, all of my friends at BYU were just like, don't take chemistry if you can avoid it. And so I decided not to, but I ended up for the past 2 years going to a community college to get those chemistry degrees. So don't let your friends scare you out of taking a course that might not be so difficult. I enjoyed chemistry, I loved it. And so I think I'm in the right spot. So with that, I know some of the questions are coming up, but I did want to share some of the stuff that maybe I'm working on and just like kind of what interns can get up to at the National Museum of the American Indian. So I am going to share my screen real quick. So I'll go backwards just a little bit. Well, no, I'll start here. Let's see. Does that work? Yes. So this was one of my first projects. This is in the collections storage facility, and this is their collection of boats. And as you can see, that's me right here, and it extends all the way up there. So I had the lucky job of dusting this entire facility as part of their annual cleaning practices. So I worked with a couple of other staff to just kind of make sure everything was finally dusted with this really fancy vacuum that can change its suction. So it can be a really hard suction or a really soft suction, which was nice considering some of these boats were really fragile. Like they're hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, and some of them are just falling apart in front of your eyes. So this is the other project that was really exciting for me. This is a Dene blanket from, oh, I can't remember the date now. But I got to do what's called a humidification process, where I put some moisture in it to get rid of, there's this huge crease. So a long time ago, it had been folded in half for a long time. So I was trying to get rid of that big, huge crease because it's about to go on loan to the Latino Center as another sister Smithsonian exhibit. And then here's just some of the other fun things. So I got to help install the NMAI's current exhibit called Raven and the Box of Daylight. And that's Glassworks by Preston Singletary. So these are those, he created these baskets, these woven baskets out of glass, and this mask out of glass. Like it's an entire exhibit full of hundreds of materials, and it's just glass, and it's just beautiful and amazing to learn about glass making, and just to touch some of this stuff is amazing. There's a headdress that I'll be working on, and this is a little stone piece that has some bad damage on it. This UV light, I get to work with fun lights and change the color of, there's a adhesive inside there. And I might be working with conservator to take away that adhesive and reapply it with a more stable adhesive, because the adhesive in there is turning brown and gross. So those are some of the things I can get up to at NMAI. So some of the exciting things on the horizon.
That is so amazing. Can I just interrupt really fast? Because I feel like we just need to do a summary of all of these amazing things that have happened for both of you. I love how in response to gaining qualifications to help you, you have this passion and drive for what it is that you're doing. You talked with people, you were insatiably curious, you changed your mind, you pivoted. Like these are all things that a student will experience as they're getting into this. And Rachel, seeing the things that you've been doing, and Krishna, seeing the things that you've been doing have been really, I think, exciting and helpful for our students to know where they can go with their liberal arts education. And so thank you so much for framing that for us. I know you're on a roll here. And so I guess the question that I'm hearing is, or that you're answering is, the special projects that you get to be involved with in the experiences and what that means for what's coming up. So maybe you could help us understand too, why is what you're doing so meaningful for history and especially meaningful for you on a personal level? And maybe that's where we'll take the conversation next.
I'll start first and then I'll let Krishna take over just because I was on the roll. So like I said, my interest has always been in Native American studies just because I am from the Hopi tribe, and it's always been that drive to be closer to home. So it's really awesome being here at NMAI. NMAI is one of the unique institutions that is like at the forefront of the idea of like decolonizing, but basically really turning things around and focusing on community involvement. So it's really cool. You know, I've been able to work on projects that was doing analysis on materials to determine if there was pesticides on it and if they were handleable, basically, of like, you could get sick or you could not get sick. Not that I could actually say that, but I could say pesticides are present. You can find somebody who can tell you more about it. But that kind of thing of just being able to help communities is the biggest motivator for me. So that's all I have to say for that. But Krishna, if you want to take over.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rachel. And so the Smithsonian, it's quite large. There's something for everyone, like all majors. There's the history, art, and culture side, which I've always been on, and there's the hard science side, like with air and space, natural history, the zoo. But the Smithsonian is very much set up like a college campus. And like, we like to kind of think of our, like some of the units as the ethnic studies or cultural studies college of the Smithsonian. So National Museum of American Indian, the DC Museum opened in 2004. The New York one previously, 1989, became part of the Smithsonian. And then our other sister unit, National Museum of African American History and Culture, opened 2016. The Smithsonian Latino Center will become the 20th museum, and the Smithsonian American Women's History Initiative will become the 21st museum. And so those two units in particular will be hiring a lot the next few years while they're building up their museums. But my first unit, smaller sister unit to NMAI, Smithsonian Asian Pacific American Center, will probably become the 22nd museum, but years down the road. And so I'm really grateful for like my experiences at NMAI and just, like learning the parallels like in history with my family being my heritage from the Philippines. Because so NMAI is Western Hemispheric. It covers North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, plus Hawaii. And a lot of Philippine history, there are parallels because it was also a Spanish colony and US colony, like, a lot of countries in the Western Hemisphere. And so, yeah, it's just been a really neat journey for me. In some ways, some things have come full circle. And like the NMAI focuses on, like, for example, there's a huge Dia de los Muertos festival every November 1st, and that's a big holiday in the Philippines. And, being members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, family history is really important to us. So I just like love seeing all these like parallels in my life. And another cool thing was like my first unit at the Smithsonian, my director was from Hawaii. And so I think coming into NMAI, I had like a little bit of Hawaii background, but it's been a wonderful learning curve, learning more about Native American history, which I did actually take a couple of classes at BYU. And so, yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we're going to move into the next question. As you've been talking about how you started your backgrounds and how all of these kind of worlds are meshing together, I'm thinking that students are probably wondering, yeah, but what skills, what courses, what do you suggest in terms of things that students can learn at BYU to be prepared to do the kinds of work that you two have done? So I think that would be a good question to answer for our students on the call.
I have like Rachel has like more like specialized museum experience, like for curatorial content, requisites for those graduate programs. But as far as like courses at BU, I think it depends what I specialize in. And actually, I saw this more like in my previous unit, the Wilson Center. So the focus was on international relations and public policy. And my background was always, American history, American studies. So that was also another great learning experience for me to learn more about math. But I think many students were interested in a region, but would take a foreign language not related to that region. Or I would see students, to do a study abroad. And the interesting thing, like most of our interns have done study abroad, but try to do it like on a region like that you actually want to get and focus on, not just for fun. Or just being a little bit more strategic with your classes in terms of region or even like time period. And in the museum field, there are more and more cultural museums than ever before. And so that's, just something to think about.
Yeah, and I can take over to talk about like specifically museums and going down that track in particular. And actually, there's even a Q&A in here that I'm kind of going to answer along the way as well. So I'm just going to mark that. But talking about degrees or classes, so the classes I took were anthropology, archaeology, art history. That was kind of the courses I ended up taking. I ended up taking a anatomy class or anatomy because I was interested. I loved that class because I wanted to do bioarchaeology. And I think stuff like that ends up becoming useful however you want. So I would say in the case of museums, it's more important to follow your passion because museums is such a, what's the word? Diverse field. That's why I'm saying, like Krishna was talking about the different kinds of museums, like even just in the Smithsonian that you have air and space. So like if you have a background in engineering and science and math, NMAI, if you have a background in anthropology or different things like that, or the other part of museums that most people don't know about is education. So even if you're just going into education, that's a whole nother field if you want to go into museums studying that. For curation, it's really what you're interested in curating about. So whether it's history, whether it's peoples and cultures, you want to find that degree or that niche that you're interested in. So there's a lot of people in the museum field that have history degrees. They have art history degrees, they have education degrees, just general humanities degrees. So I think the museum field is just super welcoming to whatever you bring to it. I even know people that go into exhibit design and stuff that have backgrounds in construction work and engineering and interior design. So anything you want to bring to the field, whatever you're interested in, is important to seek that. So I wouldn't say there's anything more common, but I always feel like in school, it's just important, in my opinion, to just chase what's interesting, particularly as an undergrad, because I think graduate school is where you can get more specialized in what you actually want. So I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I didn't get more time to explore because I was so focused when I got to BYU. I was like, I'm going to be a photojournalist. And I just stayed in my lane instead of exploring and, taking that chemistry course and finding out, oh yeah, I do like science. So that's what I would have to say.
Fantastic. And because of time, I think that there are some questions that have come in on the last several questions that we've been talking about. And so before, I know Krishna and Rachel have prepared a presentation, also part of this, but maybe before that, let's switch it up a bit and answer some of these questions, if that's okay. I hope that doesn't throw us off too much, but Allison or Arnie, I know that you have been logging these questions. Would you like to jump on and ask those for Krishna and Rachel before we get into the whole how to get an internship with the Smithsonian portion?
Yeah, let me do that, unless you want to, Allison. Okay, we have a couple of questions out here, and folks, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A so that we can make sure that we keep track of them, okay? This question is for Krishna from Megan McConnell. What qualities and experiences do you look for when selecting prospective interns?
That's a great question. So when applying, I think it's important to do your homework and research which internship program that would be a good fit for your academic interests and professional goals. And I'll go ahead and paste all these links in the chat. But there are over 60 internship programs throughout the Smithsonian complex. And, oh, there it goes. And so just reading up about the museum's mission and the different departments in that museum and figuring out which departments fit your interests. And so you really have to tailor your application, like your cover letter and statement of interest, and describe how interning in those museum departments will benefit you, help you reach your goals academic and professionally. And so you have to tailor it, right? You have to know what are the current museum exhibitions, public programs, publications, and like why that interests you. I mean, that shows, a few things that you did your homework, you know what, you know, their current projects, and, you know, convey like your excitement and how you can help contribute to the current projects. And so you do want to apply widely, because the needs can change from semester to semester with different departments in terms of supervisor availability, you know, staff go on leave, you know, they get sick, maternity leave, get different jobs. You know, it's going to happen from semester to semester, a little bit unpredictable, and the projects always change out. You want to apply widely, and also, like, the purpose of the cover letter and your resume is land that interview. So with review, I think to also convey like your passion and excitement, because a lot of the applicants, you know, are good students, look good on paper, you know, similar background achievements, you know, high achievers. But I have seen internship spots go to the candidate who seemed like they wanted more. Like, that was a deciding factor. And also, just another tip about applications, I wrote some down, that make sure you use the correct museum name. I see that get goofed up a lot, 'cause I mean, there's a lot of museums at the Smithsonian, or a lot of candidates, they'll put Smithsonian Institute like in their cover letter, but it's actually Smithsonian Institution. So just like little things like that. You don't want to make those common mistakes. But yeah, but as far as skills and things, I think a lot of the intern mentors or supervisors, they're not necessarily looking for like the most qualified or overqualified applicant. They're really looking for the candidate who they think will benefit the most from the internship. So that's just something to keep in mind. I know that's not very obvious in the application, but that's like my advice.
That's very interesting to know, and what a nice outlook that gives you, that they are looking for, not only do they have their interests in mind, but they also have the interests of the applicant as well. Thank you for that. Megan, or Rachel, this next one is for you. What has helped you make the most out of your internship?
So that's a good question. And I kind of want to spitball off of what Krishna said as well, just because I think my favorite thing about this particular internship, and having had interns myself, like when I was curator in my past life, is the Smithsonian Institution. And I don't know if it's the same in other areas, but specifically at NMAI, it's been really awesome, because the first and foremost priority of interns is to be here as a learning experience. It's not to fill in gaps. It's not to be kind of shoved into a corner and, like, you know, done intern duties of, you know, getting somebody coffee or different things like that, just like cheap paid labor. But it's really about a learning experience. Like, I've had a really great time with my mentors in the conservation department, who are just super open of just me saying like, hey, I really want to dive into a little bit more about this particular object I'm about to treat. So I'm not going to have time to do these other ones that are on the list. And they're like, that's great. You take the time, you dive in, you learn as much as you want to and how you want to. And I think that's really awesome. And just having that open communication with your mentors. I've been really fortunate to have really great ones, particularly that, like I said, the conservation department has a lot of interns like every year and fellows. So I think they're very primed and comfortable with giving people their space to learn at their own paces, which is really awesome. So
that's great. Good advice. Krishna, I see you wanted to say something.
Oh, I mean, just going along with what Rachel said, so to be an internship mentor, we don't really use the term supervisor at the Smithsonian. We use the term internship mentor. They have to take 2 trainings through our central office of internship programs. And then I also do specific one for the mentors at NMAI. And in order for them to host an intern, they have to develop a tailored internship learning plan. And so what Rachel said, it is a very substantial learning experience. And the primary beneficiary of an internship is the intern. And so, but if, the Smithsonian happens to benefit too, that's great, but that's not a requirement. And so, yeah, that's one of the really neat things about Smithsonian internships. It's like, yeah, our interns, they don't like make copies and sharpen pencils all day.
And look at what this experience has done for you, specifically Rachel. I mean, I look at what you've been able to accomplish because of the experiences that you've learned and being able to continue to reach out. Very, very, very nice. One more question. Do you know more about getting involved in the Latino Center? I guess this goes to either one of you.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen. Because I pulled up some of the websites I posted in the chat. And so this is the new internship page at the Smithsonian. It's only actually a few weeks old. And so it lists all the internship opportunities. But there are two types of opportunities. There's the decentralized internship programs where you apply directly to the Smithsonian unit, like NMAI. You apply directly to NMAI. And then there are the centralized internship programs where you apply to the central Smithsonian Office of Internships. And you could be placed anywhere at the Smithsonian. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but there's like the centralized versus decentralized. And so the Smithsonian Latino Center should be under the decentralized list. But they also have interns, and they're starting a new internship program in the fall for museum studies for undergraduate students. And so those applications are open as well. But Smithsonian Latino Center, they currently have a gallery at the National Museum of American History. That's where their exhibition space is right now before they build their own museum, which is really exciting. But yeah, you can see like there's a ton of units, but just scroll down to Smithsonian Latino Center. And then our link is on that page, but we'll bring you to our specific page where it shows the internship descriptions for all our different departments at our 3 locations. And so for history majors, I've seen them intern at various departments. Like there's curatorial, education, interpretive services, collections, research and documentation, repatriation, archives, library, and then for digital humanities students, there's marketing communications. And so it's pretty broad. I think that's one of the benefits for having a social science or liberal arts degree. You could go in a different number of directions. And I mean, just like, my coworkers throughout my Smithsonian units, we all came from like different backgrounds. And a lot of the curators came from academia, like they were professors and then switched careers to the museum field. And so I think that was one of the questions in the chat. As far as, let's see, Abigail asked, what are the benefits or setbacks of getting a master's degree and then getting a PhD rather than going straight to PhD? Oh, well, the good thing about internships, it helps you kind of figure out what you want to focus in and like so like the more you study, the more narrow your academic focus is, right? So internships can help you figure out what you like and what you don't like, which I've seen happen time and time again. And going, if you know you want like an academic position, like be a professor or a curatorial position, going straight to a PhD would be recommended because it comes with stipend funding. Whereas doing a master's degree separately, you have to pay for that. And then you get stipend funding with the PhD. But the PhD is more like a fast track, a master's degree included in your history PhDs are 5 to 8 years on average. But the master's is built into those years. So if you do know you want that goal, go straight to PhD. But for master's degrees, yeah, but I guess it just really depends on which particular department. It could vary from museum department.
I have some 2 cents on that as well, because one of the other interns that was here for the fall, he was just like my favorite human being because he was just so excited every time we walked into the collections room. But talking to him too, like he was on the fence of whether or not he wanted to go for a master's or a PhD. And we've talked a lot about what his interests are and like where he wanted to go. And like he already had a clear idea of what he wanted to study, where he wanted to study it, how he wanted to study it. It was just, he was already there. And so it was just, and he was asking me that kind of question too of like, well, why would, like, should I apply for just a master's or should I apply for a PhD? And it's one of those things of like, if you know what you want to do and just go for it. I know, just speaking from my personal experience, mine was just a fear out of not having the right network to get into the program that I wanted to. And I just wanted to jump into school instead of waiting and applying for another year after that. So it's just kind of the game you want to play of how you want to go about it. But like, if you know, and you're already in those networks and talking to those people, like there's nothing wrong with going straight to that PhD if that's your end goal. But I think a master's is kind of a good medium step if you're still not 100% sure, but sure enough in one direction or the other.
Good, thank you, great information. Madison asked a question to Rachel. She said, I'm currently interning at the MPC with Paul Stavas, and I'm loving it, with an exclamation mark after that. How did that internship help prepare you for your Smithsonian internship, and what skills did you carry over from it?
So my time at MPC, I was doing archives, but I also was taking the collections coursework with Paul as well. So like it was like 4 something R. It was one of those extra courses that was just like Paul made it up for that semester. So we were focusing on collections management. And so I would say I loved Paul's willingness to get you hands-on experience with different things. So the things that I did when I was there that really helped me with my skills, not only just getting into grad school, but also for this internship, would be understanding a collections management database. I don't know if you're still using, it's not Embark there, we have Embark here. No, Embark was somewhere else. Rediscovery, sorry, I don't know if that's still the same one, but it was a good foundation to understand a database. Also knowing how to catalog something. So that was a lot of my time. I cataloged 6,000 photographic slides. And then I also cataloged over 500 public archives reports. And I digitized those reports as well. But then also just in my coursework, I had the opportunity to have my hands on and doing storage mounts, which is critical really when you're going into collections management. So that's where I was first introduced to cave, or what's the word? Concave. There's a better word for it. But hollow mounting for storage. I have a picture of it, but I'm not going to pull it up. But stuff like that has been very useful. And even like in my time, I would take a break out of my office when I was cataloging all of those reports and just being like, okay, I just want to see what other people, and I was good friends with the other staff that were there at the same time. And I remember there was one instance they were having trouble mounting a necklace that had like bear claws on it or something like that. And I was just like, oh, I think I can trouble solve that. And so it was just kind of jumping in and saying like, oh, I think I could do that. Like I even made boxes for a repatriation that we were doing. So again, it was just kind of poking ahead and saying like, yeah, I think I could do that. That really gave me more experiences beyond just being the archives assistant and doing those cataloging.
That's fantastic. Well, that's all of the Q&As that I have. So folks, any of you out there that have more questions, get them into the Q&A. I'll turn the time back over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you. I think maybe at this time, as maybe more questions are being formulated from our attendees, Krishna, I know you and Rachel had prepared some information. This is going to be a summary info session. We have been talking about collaborating in the future to do something a little more intensive, but maybe we could take some time to do that if that's something you've prepared.
Yeah, sure. I can finish sharing the websites. And so for NMAI, there are like very like niche museum departments, like collections, conservation, registration, repatriation. And so NMAI and the National Museum of Natural History are the two Smithsonian museums with the repatriation departments, where they return, sacred objects that weren't supposed to be taken in the first place back to their home communities. And so actually a lot of our repatriation interns are actually interested in law, like repatriation law. But history is also relevant because they're doing the provenance research on like the genealogy of an object and like who owned the objects. So yeah, it's very interesting work. The operationals that every museum has, like IT, marketing, communications, development or fundraising office, is quasi-federal. 2/3 of the Smithsonian funding, federal appropriations, 1/3 is from gifts, grants, and donations. So every museum, Smithsonian office, special office, like big fundraising galas, things like that. And then also for history majors, anthropology, and actually, yeah, digital humanities. There's interpretive services. So at NMEI, it's called the Cultural Interpreter Program. And I just want to pull up one of our interns, Shannon. She did, looks like she did 7 digital learning labs. And so this Smithsonian has learning labs or digital collections used for distance learning, which has gotten a lot of hits during the pandemic with online school, for K through 12 or even colleges. And so, yeah, I mean, like our interns, like they do like amazing work and, have real things to add to their portfolio. Or one of our other interns, he actually majored in digital public humanities, helped with the Native American Women Editathon on Wikipedia, adding more accurate articles about Native women. And so this was last year, and these are the articles they were able to add, because there was hardly any information about Native American women on Wikipedia. And so yeah, Kyle worked on that. But yeah, one more thing about the cultural interpreter department. And so like in normal times, pre-pandemic times when the museum is open, they do the major exhibition tours, but during the pandemic, they had to pivot and turn the major exhibition tours into virtual field trips. And so that's been like really popular. But this is, like there's a lot of like public history, living history opportunities in the museum field. And then to apply for any Smithsonian internship, the platform is called SOLA, Smithsonian Online Academic Appointments, and it doesn't cost anything to apply. You can create a free account, and a lot of the basic application materials are the same, like resume, transcripts, recommendation letters. But the thing you need to tell is like the cover letter. I don't know how we call it a statement of interest, but it's more or less the same thing. And so it makes it easy to apply to more than one program. And then, there is one website I can pull up as well. It's the fellowships website, because we have former interns who go on to become fellows. Like, yeah, the ones that do go on to graduate school. And so, we have like predoctoral or postdoctoral fellows who come back and they do their own independent research project, but they need access to the Smithsonian collections, libraries, and archives to do their research. And then I have the Office of Human Resources page because I know internships are only temporary. As much as we love our interns, we can't keep them forever. They graduate and go on to their careers, but I always get questions about jobs as well. And so I posted the HR website. And so, yeah, the Smithsonian has two types of jobs because of the funding. So GS are the federal jobs on the general scale, and IS are the trust funded jobs on, it's called institutional scale, or the trust funded jobs. But all the jobs are on USA jobs to apply. And so that's, I think, yeah, that was like my 1 minute info session about Smithsonian internships.
There's so much to talk about. And so thank you so much. I know that probably was a quick breeze through for people who are interested, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. We only have like 5 minutes left, and I know students have to get off to their classes, but I was curious if you had one piece of advice for undergraduate students as they are considering qualifiers to get into internships and then also to continue with their career or academic journey, what would that be? Either one of you can answer.
I'll go first, if that's okay, Rachel. But I think with BYU, and again, like another shout out to Washington Seminar, just using those resources, because and Washington Seminar is year round, fall, spring, summer, and so doing a semester away, it's like kind of like study abroad but in DC, is a good way to go, because it's part of your it's part of your curriculum. You're not losing any time doing internships separately. And if you can do an internship like in the off season during the school year, you'll get more internship offers, because summer is super competitive. But another silver lining with the pandemic is now that there are more virtual opportunities. Because historically museum internships were on site, like being in the museum is a big part of the experience. But as I mentioned, we've been able to pivot to like digital humanities projects, virtual field trips, and so forth. And so, yeah, virtual also is another opportunity if you can't physically make it out to DC or New York as well. But
Rachel?
It took me a minute to think of that, but think of some good words. But I think for me is just not be afraid of letting people know what you're interested in. That's really what got me where I am. That example of, being able to tell Paul at MPC, like, hey, I'm interested in touching this kind of stuff. Or before, when I was volunteering at a conservation lab, of letting people know, like, hey, I'm interested in grad school, what are the steps I need to do? And there, you can find mentors that will help you. And then along that same lines of just don't listen to the naysayers. Just because, again, I think about just that missed opportunity I had of not taking the chemistry courses for what I needed when I could have, just because everybody's different. Everybody's experiences of one thing is not going to be exactly your experience with it. So just go ahead and run for the stars, I guess, in that sense, and just do you, and make sure people know what you want.
Great. Thank you both so much for being here. I don't know, guests, just so you know, there's information in the chat. Both of these alumni have given their information if you have questions and the time frame in which they can answer those. And so thank you both so much for being here. I have learned so much from this session. And for those of you on the call, we will be having another webinar March 17th with one of our other students who's a current BYU intern with Family Search. And so we're really excited about that. But we're really, really excited again. Krishna and Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us, and we look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.